Today's topic is fullers. My method of putting a fuller in a sword or a knife. The fuller is this groove that runs down the length of a blade. It's not there as a blood groove or anything else. It's there simply to reduce the overall weight of the blade. I'm currently working on a sword for a client, and we're going to put a fuller down the middle. So the first thing we need to do is just take some layout fluid and mark down a center line and the overall length and tip of the sword. And the disclaimer, this is my way. It's not the only way, it's not the best way, just the way I do things. One of my first tasks when I make a sword is to put in the fuller. It's much easier to do this when you have parallel lines to work with. We're going to start with a 1/4 inch bar of steel. Then we're going to break it into thirds, and now we have to figure out how far we can grind into the fuller and what width that fuller is going to be. I could just go over to the grinder and start grinding, but I found this really cool website that has a whole bunch of calculators on it. And what I'm really after is to calculate the depth and the width of my fuller. I want to be able to go as deep as I can while maintaining the strength of the blade, but not actually go all the way through without guessing. So I'm going to scroll through all of the calculators available and look for this circular arc calculator. It's going to allow me to calculate all of the parts of the fuller. So first thing I'm going to do is change everything to inches. If you work in millimeters, that's fine too, but I work in inches. And if you look at the image they've got, that yellow part, it looks a little bit like a fuller. You've got the height or depth of the fuller and the width of the fuller. So what we need to do is go fill in our calculations. Since I have a depth of 0.25 to work with, I'm going to divide that in half and then go for about 650 thou for the depth of each fuller. I have a 1/2 inch radius, 1 inch radius, 3 inch radius, and 5 inch radius wheels. We're going to use the 1 inch radius wheel. You can play around with the calculations to get the depth and the width you want by changing the radius, the depth, or the overall width. Then you press calculate, and it'll show you how far you can go and what target widths you're looking at. This should give me a width of about 700 thou, which is a little bit more than 1/3, but that's okay. We might not go quite as deep. But it gives me an overall guide now as to which wheel I should use and how deep I should go. All right, we'll go over to the grinder. I've set the table now so that it lines up with the middle of my piece. Now you'll see by changing the angle, I can change where it's going to grind. If I tilt it back towards myself, straight up and down or forward, I can make sure I'm following the line. I've also turned the speed of my grinder way down. You can actually see it almost. But if I grind with it at an angle, you'll see I'm going to be below the line. If I tilt it up a little bit more, I'll be on the line. And if I tilt a little bit more, I'll be above the line. And that's how I'm going to control going down that line I've scribed on the billet. So we'll move over to the actual sword and we'll start grinding down that center line. I'm very gentle at the start, and then I'm going to start going faster and deeper till I get to the depth I want. I'll do a couple test touches to make sure I'm down the middle, have a look, and now try and maintain that angle while I'm dragging the bar back and forth down the length of the sword. Once I've got that center mark put in, it actually gets a little bit easier to keep it centered because it creates a groove then that the wheel sits in. So after going back and forth a little bit, I'm going to check the width. I know I'm not there yet, but I'm also pre-heat treat, so I don't want this to get to the full width yet. I'll finish it off after heat treat. To measure the depth of the fuller, I'm going to use this height gauge. I'll zero it, then I'll measure the height of the bar. The problem is I can't really get into the bottom of the fuller. So what I'm going to use is a small drill bit, piece of steel, something round that can lay in the bottom of the groove. And then I'll use that as my 0 point and then measure back against it. So I'll take my piece of wire, we'll put it on top of the blade, and then we'll zero against the height of the blade and the height of the wire. Then we'll put the wire in the bottom of the fuller and measure the height with to the top of the wire. That is actually going to be the depth of our fuller. We're close, so we'll go back to the grinder again, make it a little deeper, come back and we'll check it one more time. Zero it against the bottom, measure it against the top, and 54 thou, that's okay. With the fuller ground in, I'm just going to grind in a tip. It's just not worth heating up the forge for this little bit of steel to remove. So I'll grind that off and I'll put a taper on the blade as well. So the tip is actually going to only be about 1.5 inches wide, and the base of the blade will be the full 2 inches. So it'll give it a really nice balance. One of the things I like about having the rotating table is I can actually go lengthwise down the blade that'll help me give a nice straight edge to that taper. So once I've got it on there, I'm just going to straighten it out by running it down the platen in the horizontal position. From here, I'm going to use the flat again to start putting in the bevels. This helps me just keep them nice and straight. With the bevels put in the blade now, I'm actually just going to take the angle grinder and we'll add a tang to the remaining steel, and then we'll round off the joint between the tang and the ricasso so that we get a nice even transition. To refine the bevels a little bit more, I'm now going to use the vertical 2x72 just to get that nice crisp line between the fuller and the bevel. I'm going to take it down and leave it reasonably thick before heat treatment. I'll refine it a lot more after heat treatment, but for right now, I want a decent amount of mass so this thing doesn't warp too badly in heat treatment, if at all. And it truly is amazing. We started with just over 5 pounds of steel, and we're down to about 2 3/4 just by putting in fuller and bevel and ready for heat treat. After heat treat, we'll take a whole bunch more off of these. If you like these, please hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks.